What I'm seeing at the moment is we don't have the vocabulary to be able to change how municipalities and governments are seeing this kind of actions.
Yeah.
And we need to have the environmental reporting to then say, hey, if we create 500 square feet of space or 1,000 feet of space of urban farm on the roof, we're able to create this for pollinators. We're able to reduce heat wave by this metric. We're able to reduce risk of flooding by this. And that will have not only an impact on how cities are seeing the benefit of urban farming, but it could also trickle into having corporations and institutions benefit from reducing their insurance rate. If we're able to get to that level and that kind of vocabulary, it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah.
You have to understand that first, growing in cities will never fulfill the demand for food.
Yeah, for sure.
First.
Yeah.
And it's just the perfect way of initiating that conversation. Like, we're telling our clients, like, why don't you go to the farmer's market? Why don't you try to connect with local farmers?
Yeah.
Like, if you like that heirloom tomatoes, it's not true you're going to find it at the grocery store. Awareness is necessary. And if someone is not aware that a tomato is not supposed to taste like water, then they're not going to be inclined, I think, to go and invest in buying those kind of produce or better ways of feeding themselves. And so it really, sometimes you got to grab people by the stomach, I feel.
All right, folks. Well, today we have a very special guest, Orlane Panet. She's from Montreal, and we're going to learn more about who you are, what you do. But before we go there, we were just talking about farmers market, and you were saying that you were at Atwater. You live close to there, and I was talking about going to Jean Talon, and we were having this nice discussion about local food scene. And you just said, it's hard to know who's really a grower and who's a distributor. I like that you pointed that out, because that's a big issue in our movement. Like,
I think so. I think most people go to the market with a bit of a myopia and thinking that everyone is a producer, everyone knows how, the produce ended up on the stand, but it's not the reality anymore. So it's really a question of digging and finding the people that are still doing it and connecting with them.
Yeah, it's the way I've always said to know that is that you look at people's hand when they serve you the veggies. If they're brown hands, just like rugged hands, you'll have your answers. If they're clean.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to use a bit of intuition and creativity. And it sounds bad, but you kind of are judging people like, are you a real farmer? I'm not sure about you. And move on to the next booth.
Yeah, but it's important because in the end, I guess most people, they want to buy fresh, but they also want to support the local food scene. So if they're kind of tricked into it.
Yeah. No, it's important to ask questions too, People, how do you produce those things? Do you produce them? Normally people would be honest. So it's still, I think, a way we can...
Would you be that kind of shopper where you'd ask that to somebody?
Yes.
Like, are you the producer?
Yes.
With a little smile?
Of course. And I'm like, how was the cucumber season? And if I know that the season wasn't good, they're like, yeah, amazing. I'm like,
Yeah.
So try to
That's
be
savvy
digging
shopping.
a little. Yeah.
All right, shall we talk about Microhabitat, which you're
sure.
a co-founder of, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Want to give us the quick elevator pitch of what it is?
Of course. So Microhabitat, what we do is transform unused spaces like rooftop locations in urban environment to integrate urban farming. So it's a turnkey service across North America for now, soon in Europe, where we provide really a service where an urban farmer's there every week at the farm and on the site to do the maintenance, the harvesting, and create an educational platform for people to become aware about urban farming and just, our food system in general.
Okay, so when you say that you're in North America and soon to be Europe, what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about a platform? What are we talking about?
Yeah, so we have local infrastructure in all of the cities that we're operating in. So we have 11 regions for now. So from Alberta all the way down to Texas, and our business model is providing that service with local teams. So we have basically infrastructure, for example, in Texas and Dallas with a local team, and they go service the clients there. They integrate the urban farm, select the variety, have local producers there that are able to, give us the plants to be able to then grow onto our clients' locations. And we do a service where we have a farmer every week there that does the maintenance, the harvesting, and each client decide what they want to do with the harvest. So we're producers for them.
Okay, so it's not like a food hub. It's a farm that in the end the product is that there's an urban farm
Yep.
that is populated by a grower, a community, and then the Microhabitat helps develop that. It gives the game plan.
We do everything for them.
Okay.
So basically, we have a business that will have a roof that's unutilized, and we'll go transform that space, install a farm, have our farming team go there and install the right variety for the condition of the space. And from that point on, the client will get also a fixed schedule. So every Tuesday morning, they'll have their urban farmer on site that will be taking care of the maintenance and harvesting. And that's someone from Microhabitat. And they decide what they want to do with the harvest. So either they'll use it internally for their staff or for their kitchen, or we've built a program for local food banks, so we can link also our corporate farms with food banks. Yeah,
How many cities currently?
11. Yeah.
11.
We're supposedly running the largest private network of urban farm in the world.
That's it. That's why you're on the podcast.
I guess so.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And do you want to tell us a bit more how it started with you? Like
Sure.
where did that? Because I met you at the very start of this,
Yeah.
and I was telling this to Chris. Like, I saw you, and then we were actually. I don't think it was a formal interview. It was just kind of casual coffee. But my older partner, my ex partner, can we say that?
Yeah.
Ex business partner.
Yeah.
We met you, and I was so impressed by you, and I was like, "Wow, we want to have her on our team. You know, I want her to run our show." And then you politely declined, said, "I have my own project, blah blah blah." And then 6-7 years later, here you are.
Yeah. It's been already a few years. We started back in 2016, and it really bloomed from a friendship. Alexandre Ferrari, Roy, and myself, we were friends since high school. I actually have a background in accounting and management, so nothing to do really with
but
with
that comes
farming.
in handy.
And he had a background in environmental sciences and agriculture. So he had really the idea of go and transform unused spaces, try to create a system that would be different from the green roof technology, because we saw limitations. We saw that most buildings weren't built for green roof technology, and it was limitative also for food production. So we wanted to come up with a different method, which was for now what we do, the pot system. And we were able to integrate urban farming with a few first clients. So Alex really started, set the few farming zones, tested processes and protocols that we would put in place to really initiate our business model. And I was working for a wealth management company in the meantime. I was still in university, and we just joined forces. I just promised him that I would triple sales in that year, and if that was the case, we would have an agreement, and I would be part of the business. And I went over those objectives, so I renegotiated, and we were in business together.
So he was more the farming part, and you were more the business
100%,
side.
yeah.
And I guess that's probably still the case. But are you? Have you dove
deep into the farming part?
Yeah. Have you?
100%. Yeah.
100%.
It became really my passion. I think the switch was natural for me because while doing my studies in accounting, I just realized that, climate changes and just sustainability was a lot more pressuring on myself than I thought. And I think having a purpose in my job was really something that I couldn't just ignore. So it was a natural transition, I think, for me. But then just diving into that natural environment is just fascinating to me. I just feel like, nature in general is just so fascinating. And since then, I've been passionate about it. So it's also a personal passion. And I was lucky enough to have Alexandre really show me the way and have me discover that whole field. But we did everything together in the first phases. I've installed the first farm. I've harvested them with Alex. He showed me everything. And so I know really the bottom line of our business. Now I think that we have really complementary, skill sets, Alex and myself. He's a visionary, but he's also very business wise. So I think I don't feel alone in that field in managing the business, and that gives me also the liberty and the space to be creative also in things that are related to farming. The client experience, the kind of product that we could provide for our clients, the method, the processes, everything that has to do with organization is also a passion of mine. So whenever I can help, organize stuff, it's sometimes places where I like to dive.
What was the reason for this particular business choice? like what was the driving force behind it, or what were the problems you were trying to solve with this business?
I think realizing the numbers that are showing up about our food system, the disconnect with humans and just nature in general, and just the logic of rethinking our urban environments, understanding where most population will end up in the following years. It's going to be an urban environment, yet we have all those underutilized spaces that could be turned into something productive. So I think I've been always very logical about my journey and just trying to, I think it came from my background in accounting where a lot of people don't really believe in sustainability. And I think that has been already, and always been my aim is how can we rally anyone behind something that is becoming so logical that we all feel like it's necessary. And I feel like urban farming can really check that off in some senses.
Had you ever looked into really like the history of urban design and how cities, I just, when I was thinking about this interview, I thought about Frederick Olmsted and the founding of Central Park.
Yeah.
And basically just that at the onset of the Industrial Revolution, cities became so unbearably terrible places to live because they didn't have really the design foresight to even think about green spaces. Yeah. And it took people that had that realized you need to plant trees. You can't just be a wasteland.
Yeah.
And I feel like now we're just at another like step in the progression, and now you're a part of that, which is really cool and interesting to think about how we can be continuously redesigning the urban scape.
Did you know, Chris, that guy did Mont-Royal also? Yep. So he was. Do you get to talk to city planners and local?
I do.
Politicians and
I was doing it a lot more, I think, in the beginning, and I think I got a bit tired. I think the length of the process and just changing, it's a big boat. It takes some time to change that. And I feel like at some point I realized that my energy were better spent with organization that believed in that and that had the capability and not necessarily the political restriction to act on those things. And I think I got to the point of like, let's lead by example. Let's just do it with the ones that are believing in this. And then at some point, I think that we're just going to be too big for people to just ignore us. Yeah. And I think that was my avenue for that. Now I'm starting to dive a little bit more back into it, but it's tedious. I feel it's still tiring.
Am I oversimplifying if I say that, let's say you can invest a lot of time in a local politician to educate them or him or her. And then, that person might not be there 3 years down the road. Exactly. You never know. Yeah. So it's kind of it's putting a lot of risk.
Yeah.
And if I would say the reverse, like when we do business, then, you're building something, it's tangible. And then if you have local people that are running those businesses, then has perhaps more capacity. There's
a lot more capacity. And I think also with enterprises, there's also the way to organically grow with them. If I do something with the city of Montreal, it's not going to affect the city of New York or Dallas or Chicago. So it's like it's a tedious work that has to be redone. And I think it's a group effort. And I think that's something beautiful that I'm seeing with urban farming when people are asking, do you see competition or things like that? I think the field is just so young still that we're all just pushing that new idea and that new way of rethinking urban spaces. So I think it's going to be a group effort more than me just supporting all of this, but I would want to be part of the change.
Yeah, when there's one farm that's there, it's offering a template, an example, it can have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
We've seen that a lot on small farms.
And we've had this theme come up in other conversations of basically proof of concept first before anything else, which is interesting too, because it really does seem like you're at the very, very, very beginning of something that, what do you hope for like the future of, if in 40 years, let's say, like what do you imagine the expansion of urban farming to look like in the cities that you're a part of?
Well, I think urban farming in general will have just so many different forms. I think we're seeing so many creative ways of using unused spaces. Where I would like to see urban farming continue to grow is, I think, since it's a new field, I think we have ways to create new boundaries and really challenge the status quo of how farming has been operating in the past years. And I think the advantage of the urban environment and just capacity for growing is a lot different from the rural environment. So I hope that the field is going to really aim at doing ecological farming and just conscious farming in general, because we have a lot more capacity to do it. And I think there's also legal aspects already in cities that are allowing for that. You know, most cities will have a ban on pesticides. So I hope that it creates a bit of a land for those kind of opportunities, but in the right direction, not to duplicate what we've been sometimes doing wrong in just regular farming.
I love the, you want to?
No, go ahead.
I love the idea of unused spaces. I'm not sure why, but I just, the thought of just, because the city is full of them, like even more, well, actually, and so is the rural environment too. Something else you said too that is like a connection to market gardening even is market gardening was sort of viewed as like against the agricultural paradigm of the time, because, you know, who are you to think you can farm on an acre? Yeah. And this is a similar thing of like, we're taking a space that was overlooked by the larger paradigm.
A small space.
And trying to put it to use. What spaces other than rooftops have you currently worked with?
We do also ground level farming, and, you know, not all the companies have access to their roof, but I think one thing that we connect on is just living soil. Whatever we do when we're integrating urban farms will grow in soil. We've also come up with an indoor production unit that's also in soil. Most of the product out there are using hydroponic, and it doesn't go along with, you know, our values. Just we are promoters of ecological farming. The way that we're producing at the moment is as is, but we're always trying to find new ways of integrating urban farming. But I think the main point is always going to be holistic approach, ecological farming, and just trying to...
And soil. So does Microhabitat have a stand for soil or against?
No, everything that we do is in soil.
Yeah,
even our indoor production unit. Okay. So normally people will have hydroponic. We use soil.
Okay, and then that would be for you all like a standoff. Like we don't want to go...
No. Because it's not.
I like it.
It's the sustainability aspect of it. So once you start looking at it on a global aspect, it doesn't make sense for us to start doing hydroponic and aeroponic and all those things. We have to protect the soil that's feeding us, you know.
Yeah. What kind of soil do you use? I guess just is it potting soils and.
Well, we try to use high performing soil, so just a lot of organic matter, and we're trying to also source stuff locally, because even if we have global infrastructure, all of the live stuff are going to be sourced locally. So plants, the soil, the amendments, everything. And I feel like, you know, we've learned also from the market gardener. It was for sure a source of inspiration, and I think we're just trying to get in that line with the capacity of the market. Not all the markets are offering the same thing.
So, Orlane, would you say that, you know, when we say it's a turnkey, that's part of it? Like, you will have crop itineraries with how to use different containers, what recipe, what works, what doesn't work. Does it go as far as giving the crop spacing, you know, all the information you need to grow in pots? That's what happens. So you have like the guidebooks, the instruction to grow it based on all these years of experiences, mistakes, failures, success.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the grower that gets into Microhabitat has a guidebook.
Yeah, it's a full training process. They also most of them will be coming from agricultural, you know, backgrounds, so either working on farms or have been studying in that. And then they have the training process that is the Microhabitat standard. So we've standardized everything, and that's also the reason why we've been able to scale the business and go on to different markets. We're adapting. You know, we have made our own selection of varieties. We're promoting heirloom varieties and rustic species, but we still need to adapt based on the region. You know, we're not growing in the same months in Dallas and in Edmonton. It's going to be different.
It's kind of reverse.
Yeah.
I like that what she's explaining, Chris, because for me, how I've seen progress in small scale farming is definitely moving away from improvising everything all the time. Like, I feel that the farms that are succeeding are the ones that are following somewhat of a template, a blueprint, that have a guideline of how to operate. They can show it to their staff. Everything's kind of narrowed down to, you know, standard operating procedures. Yeah. And I just feel that once you have that, then you can get creative, then you can work on different parts of the business, then you can have influence. And often enough, I see a lot of new growers, they're just kind of trying to reinvent everything all the time. They make a lot of mistakes. And, why not just kind of plug and play and then improve other aspects of farming, which is not just growing,
I think it's a good transposition to also, running a successful business. It's like you'll always have opportunities to find new things to add to your offer and et cetera. But I think just like producing, sometimes you just got to standardize, make sure that this is running well, and then you can just multiply this thing. And you don't want to change the wheel all the time. And especially I think for farming, there's a lot of intuition that comes with farming. You have to develop your eye as a farmer. And just sometimes when you've been doing it for years, your standard, the way that you're doing it is fine. And you'll always have people questioning, but they, we still have to get to that standard and stay in line with it because it works.
Most seasoned growers, I know a lot of them, they know it, but they've never written down. It's in their head. Yeah. So that means that if they're not there, the farm is like on idle. Exactly. And you have all these other folks that are kind of asking questions, and then it creates mental overload. Yeah. So, one of the things that we've done is really write everything down, all the procedures, how this is done, how this is done, how this is done. That's what we teach in the master class. It's really, it's really that. But to see it apply to micro scale farming in cities and provide support, and also I guess there's more to it. So that's one part of the service. The other part is it like a blueprint of how to create a rooftop garden?
Not really. What we realize, we could do it for clients, but what we realize is that the clients that we have want us to do it. It's something on the long term they see. Just having a landscaper, basically. Most companies don't want to have a guide on how to do their landscape. They just want someone to be expert in doing it. Yeah. And that's really how we go about with the business model. I think our intention there not only is to showcase and really challenge that status quo and saying, hey, like we can grow anywhere. If we're crazy enough to be on the 50th floor of a building in downtown New York, you can grow tomatoes on your balcony. So I think it's that wow factor that we're trying to bring, is creating a platform where we're talking about, how can people grow and get them by the stomach? Because when you're growing heirloom varieties like you do here, for sure it creates that wow factor for people. So it's gaining interest from all different sides, and then initiating conversation about our food system, sustainability, urban development, and really initiate conversations that can then bloom into people becoming a lot more aware about sustainability in general. So it's seeding a seed.
Yeah, it's a lot of seeding.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about some of the variations of the various gardens you have currently? So like you have the basic rooftop garden, I guess, but do you also have anything else going on, like maybe commercial operations where someone's actually selling the stuff, or like a community garden of a tenant-based building that's on the roof? Do you have any other variations going on at the moment?
This episode is brought to you by Bootstrap Farmer. Bootstrap Farmer is an amazing company. It's focused on making high-quality, durable, and ecological products for farmers and gardeners. They really stand out for me because, one, they manufacture their product right in the US instead of relying on overseas factories, and two, they're focused on durability and sustainability. This means no single-use plastics that you have to rebuy every year, and no cheap, flimsy metal that won't last. Their hoop house kits are among the best out there, made of super thick galvanized steel that will stand out to the elements and last you a very long time, I guarantee it. And their seating trays are absolutely indestructible. Believe me, we did a test here at the farm. A car ran over the trays and they literally didn't even deform. On top of that, the Bootstrap team is passionately dedicated to seeing the farming community grow and thrive. And that really means so much to me. That's why I do what I do here at the Market Gardener Institute. So if you care about what kind of companies you support with your dollars, check out Bootstrap Farmer. You can find them out at bootstrapfarmer.com. Thank you, Bootstrap, for all you do. Love you guys. See you soon.
So we don't go into the model where we're resellers. It's just not the way that we've built our business model, and also on the scale that we're doing it, it's not viable for us. And we're always transparent with our client. It's like the investment that you're getting with all the educational activities and the farming, et cetera, you're not going to be paying it off by selling your tomatoes, because we're creating a farm where there was no farm before. So that's
so there's other values.
Exactly.
It's not just the produce.
Exactly. It's really the produce is one of the byproduct, but the educational platform is really what people are looking into, the marketing aspect of it, and also I think the social support, having possibility to connect with local food bank, et cetera. So there's many facets of the program, but the way that we've been integrating communities, when we're there on a weekly basis, it's always a time where people are welcome to come and join the farmer. I think the fact that we have that structure is to allow for any kind of organization to integrate urban farming easily, have something simple to integrate, but then they can start mobilizing. So you're in your office or at your apartment building, you want to go garden for 30 minutes, you can go. The urban farmer still has 2.5 hours to go and do other processes in the farm, but yet the community can start to learn. And that's what we've seen as a powerful tool is most people in the community, there's going to be a few people that are going to be interested in starting the garden, but then they have the pressure of making sure that it's going to be successful, that they're not screwing the production for everyone else in the community. Are they really the only one having to go garden every week? Like, they don't want to feel that burden. So I think we're alleviating that stress a little. And we're also providing an expertise where we're showcasing methods that are ecological. We're not using any chemical product. We're in prevention. So it's creating all of the education.
So what you're saying is that like a grower that would be growing on one of Microhabitat's farm doesn't have all the pressure of the back end. He doesn't have all the pressure of even perhaps, making it viable financially, because the people that are building that farm, they have other incentive, not just selling the produce. It's part of a bigger picture.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's creating an experience. That's really what we want our farmers to do, is engage with the community. Production is still important.
Yeah.
Like, people are still expecting to have lots of harvest. So we've been doing that because we're, doing just like you, co-planting and having really crop succession. So it's still a productive zone, but we have, I think, more leverage in the sense of saying, we're not going to be producing this in your farming zone because we know it's not going to be successful, even if the client would like to have that produce, because we're trying to get the best production possible, and having a bit more agility in selecting is helping us do that.
Are there any offices where the garden is feeding like the cafeteria of the workplace?
Yeah.
Is that very common?
Yeah, we do that a lot. For example, we have like L'Oréal and big brands that are able to get some of the produce go directly.
L'Oréal, is that in Paris? Or?
In Montreal.
In Montreal. They have an office in Montreal.
Yeah, they have an industrial space in Montreal.
Okay.
So quite a few companies are doing that for internal delivery, either that directly to a cafeteria or as a self-serve station. Like you would have coffee or tea at the office, but now you have veggie station, so you can add that to your lunch or bring it back to
almost
home
like a little CSA at work.
Exactly.
Free to take.
Yeah,
That's
why not?
Cool. Yeah.
Some people will use the space also as an outdoor conference room. You go do your meeting there, you grab a few tomatoes, and you're able to really enjoy some nice time outside. So there's so many ways. We do industrial, we do retail, we do residential, office. So it's not limited to just one field. We feel like every human should be connected to nature. So why not add it to our living spaces?
I keep thinking of the TV show The Office and imagining if they had a garden on the rooftop.
My God.
But imagine all the things they could have done with that. Dwight would have his little beat corner. And
all these jokes. Oh my God.
So, but that to me, that's actually like, it's not a symbol, but it's like a sign of how much that could enliven people and give them a sense of community. Even just a few plants, like it doesn't necessarily have to be a big thing.
Can I ask, like, not a silly question, but can we talk about smart pots?
Yes.
Because I'm not so versed in urban farming. Obviously, I've been farming in the fields, but I have a feeling that smart pots were not developed here, but they became quite popular here in Montreal. Yeah. And am I wrong thinking that that's part of what's being kind of also developed elsewhere, is like that technology? Can you tell us about smart pots, what they are, how they're different than other containers?
Yeah.
And you can I can go to stuff on the screen if you ever want to show us
Yeah, well,
something.
I think we're seeing some in the photos. So basically, the Smart Pot is a trademark. It's an American company that had a trademark a long time ago, and they came up with that textile material, a geotextile pot. So it's a lightweight pot that allows for a production that would not have, it's better for the root system, root development, because it's a breedable textile. Once the patent had, the rights of the patent had expired, there was a lot of competitors on the market. So just like us, we decided to have our own manufacturers, build our own brand. So we have the Microhabitat pot, similar model. I mean, it's not a complicated item to build. It's basically a textile pot. But it's really an advantage, especially when in urban farming context, because it's a non-intrusive addition. So you can add soil on a roof that hasn't been built for this. You don't have to pierce the membrane. You don't have to go for permit. You're a little bit in a gray zone. And you're also able to have the highest production for the cheapest type of installation. It's also good for upkeep. You don't have just like wood planters to change the wood after some time. So it's a pretty easy type of installation, and it just is, I think, ideal for growing.
So depending on the size and the design of that farm, the smart pots would be, let's say 30 by 30, like blocks, and then you just add them on, or would they be long pots, or is that relevant?
We decided to go, so the Microhabitat pot is only offered in a 20-gallon format, just because for load bearing capacity, especially when working in northern areas, we need to take into consideration snow accumulation. So through our experience and just conversation with engineering teams, it's better to have that spacing between the pots so the snow can accumulate and you don't have like a big, weight.
Like
load.
a big bed would not be ideal for load bearing.
Some roof will be able to do that. It's just for us, we really wanted to make it as easy as possible and standardize as much as possible to make sure that we don't have to tweak even the kind of pot. It's like you have different sizes of farm with different numbers of pot in it, different kind of services, but its packages is very simple. And then depending on the budget of the client and the scale of the program, they can just pick and move with it.
Okay, so distilling the growing aspect of the solution, there's soil. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a given. Yeah. Then there's the smart pot, which is another. Yeah.
It's the Microhabitat.
Okay. Yeah. And then there's the specs for soil, and then for the plant, and all the harvest and all the pruning,
irrigation,
all of that,
amendments, fertilization.
So it's all standardized for somebody that doesn't have a lot of background or knowledge. Everything's there for him to just kind of do.
Yeah. But we have to be clear, it's not the client that is doing that. So it's all staff from Microhabitat that are trained.
Okay, they're trained. Okay, that's the part that I
So we have chief farmers in every one of our region that have been through the farming process for Microhabitat standard. They've been also actively working in farming before being hired in our team, and they're full-time employees. So they basically learn our standard, apply our production scheme, and then really go with the production with our methods.
Pretty nice job when you're living in the city.
Yeah.
I agree.
Do they go to multiple farms in a day?
Yes.
Probably, I imagine.
Yeah, they do multiple farms during the week. And I think that has been also one of the key factor of, I think, my interest in building this business model, being a service and not a distributor or a reseller. On the scale that we're doing it, and also with the season that we have, I think just realizing when we started the company what was offered on the field for farmers. Just it's not an easy field to be a farmer. It's not something that most people will get rich at, and it's sometimes just hard to just have the bare minimum. So when we came up with the business model, I really wanted to create something that people, they have access to group insurance. We want them to be on a year-long basis with us. We want them to have decent pay for them to be able to thrive off of this kind of career and see also long-term opportunity for them to be in that field. So I think it's been something that I've tried with our business model, and being a leader in that is rethinking what we're offering to the people that are feeding us,
What's the scale of Microhabitat in terms of farms or people working in it, for it, the number of farms?
Yeah, we've created over 250 farms across North America. We have 11 locations, and we have over 50 staff during our growing season. I'm expecting close to 100 this season.
Wow.
But yeah, it's growing. It's growing quite rapidly, and I think the interest for the European market is also there. So hope to be in Europe within the next 2 years.
That's
Interesting.
impressive.
I had a question. What was it? It slipped my mind after your question. But I want to talk a bit about also vision for the future, because it is early stages in a lot of ways, but I have a feeling you and your partner have big visions of what could be the future. If you got to the point where you had, 20,000 rooftops, like what else might you be doing at that? I'm thinking about things like wildlife corridors and other greening of the city. Like, do you want to be involved in that expansion of like doing more and more with urban planning and all those things?
Yes. 2 avenues we want to invest in is environmental reporting. So we have a technology team in our team that works on different ways to start assessing our impact, because I think that's one of the key elements in being able to then change institution and governmental ways of seeing urban farming. Because what I'm seeing at the moment is we don't have the vocabulary to be able to change how municipalities and governments are seeing this kind of actions.
Yeah.
And we need to have the environmental reporting to then say, hey, if we create 500 square feet of space or 1,000 feet of space of urban farm on the roof, we're able to create this for pollinators. We're able to reduce heat wave by this metric. We're able to reduce risk of flooding by this. And that will have not only an impact on how cities are seeing the benefit of urban farming, but it could also trickle into having corporations and institutions benefit from reducing their insurance rate because they're reducing risk of their building, reducing their interest rate. So then if we're able to get to that level and that kind of vocabulary, it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah. You can also include, biodiversity, making sure that they're providing beneficial
and real biodiversity, creating environment for local pollinators. And I think that's also a bit of the myopia we want to maybe clear is like when we're creating an urban farm, what kind of species are we supporting, and what are the ways that we should be going about to protect pollinators that are local to the environment, not just go with sometimes ideas like integrating more honeybees and things like that.
Just creating the environment instead of just kind of
exactly.
introducing species by species.
Yeah. The environmental reporting, this is your track. What is it exactly? Like what
we're working on it. I think some of the fields that we would feel there would be some value is just mitigating climate change's risk for buildings. So if you have green spaces on a roof surface, we know already, we just don't have the final metric. If we integrate a farm, for example, in a roof system, we can reduce the risk of flooding because the plants will absorb the water, will reduce the hydrous stress on the drainage system. It also do a first filtration of the water. So we are also a way of reducing risk for the buildings. Heat waves, same thing. I mean, we're heating up every year. So how could we cool the city? Then maybe that's going to be part of the solution. And for cities to start looking into this, like they did with Green Roof, we just need to have the metrics, because that's basically what happened with the Green Roof field. There was a lobby of a lot of companies regrouping together, being able to assess the benefit of those initiatives, and then provide that to municipalities and governmental agencies for them to then adjust bylaws for new constructions or renovation of existing buildings. So how can we go about so the pot system or urban farming in all its forms can be recognized for that?
So measuring the ecological services, the indicators that you would use, and how you would measure that. Do you have a plan for that? Do you know how you'll start measuring this?
Yeah, we're starting to
farms?
test. There's lots of new ways to assess this.
Can you give examples?
Yeah, for sure. For example, for assessing pollinator population, it's really surprising, but new studies are showing that the best way to go about is not necessarily filming with AI and trying to recognize the species. Sound tracking is actually better at recognizing local pollinators. There's air DNA. There's so many things that are coming out on the
Air
market.
DNA.
Air DNA.
What's that?
So actually, you can track someone all across the globe because their DNA leaves traces even in the air, in the water. So we can track people everywhere. Yeah. Yeah, and then that happens.
That doesn't sound creepy.
No, it's a little big brother, but it can be positive and beneficial when tracking pollinators. Yeah.
So that means that somebody could know where I'm going.
Exactly.
Even if I'm
wherever you go.
Wow.
Because of like skin cells and other particles being left behind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other ones that come to mind quickly?
I think pollinator is one that, in my opinion, is most fascinating in, because I feel we were all like, okay, how to track pollinators is going to be like cameras, and that's it. There's now a lot more new ways. I think the wave, as I was mentioning, that's one of the fascinating one. And I think seeing the research it looks to be like one of the best method to be very accurate. So that's one field that we want to dive into. But then I think we're just going to see so many different ways of assessing environmental impacts, heat waves.
Well, yeah, temperature, right?
Temperature,
I mean,
exactly.
What about wildlife corridors in terms of these pollinators? Are there, is there a way to be seen when it's too far away from something else that they're just not getting there, and then therefore there's an incentive to make more farms along a certain route? And
probably, I think so. I think that's going to come.
But maybe
in the
it's
future.
coming.
Yeah, for sure. The data's out there. I think really our main challenge is being able to break silos and understand how all of that data can come together so we have a big picture of what's really happening. But I think we just got to make sure that whatever we're going to be assessing is understanding how the environment was before and how can we change something.
Yeah.
And we may realize some stuff that need to be tweaked in our methods. I think it's just going to give us more clarity and how we're doing stuff and how we're affecting and benefiting the urban environment.
I don't know if you're aware of this, Orlane, you can tell me, but I'm involved with the UN Commission on Biodiversity.
Yes.
And one of their strategic goal for everyone is going to be to adhere to 35% protection of biodiversity space across the board. So across the world, across every country, across every city, across every town, across every lot.
Nice.
And for cities, getting to have 35% of its surface area, protected and enhanced with biodiversity is going to be a challenge. But you're right in there.
Yeah. I think we had the chance of becoming a leader, especially because when we started, people were just not there yet. Just like you, when you started, you have to be, I think, a bit ahead of the curve to be able to then wave, have surf off of it. I think now the world is changing a lot more rapidly. I'm very optimistic about how people are starting to realize the value of sustainability. I think COVID has been a big pressure point too.
I was going to ask about COVID.
Yeah, it was hard.
But if that was also a bit of like a catalyst of microhabitat in
yes
some
and
ways.
no. It was hard because most of our clients were initially in office spaces. So now everybody left the office space.
True.
We were privileged enough, I think, to have companies that were in a good position where they said, and had also that caring value of saying, if we're not going to be occupying those spaces, and if we know that our local communities are struggling, let's keep those spaces to be productive, and let's make sure that the production goes to the ones in need, because the demand for a local food bank had boomed crazily during COVID. So I think it was a tough time, but it was also a good time in terms of creating a sense of awareness about what's our food resilience level, and seeing people hoarding toilet paper.
Yeah.
What's going to happen if it starts to be tomatoes and things like that? So I think it was definitely dramatic. It was a tough time for just the world in general, but I think it created a sense of a bit of awareness. So not so bad after all.
Were you on a personal level for you? Was it a time to, because I see, I've seen you kind of around. You travel a lot. You're really busy. You're really involved and engaged. Was COVID a time to kind of reflect on the business model, or was it kind of like booming during all that time?
So we we have a growth of about 2 times our revenue every year. So for sure, it slowed down. We didn't grow that much in that year, but we stabilized our revenue. So it wasn't that bad. I feel like, there was a lot of other companies that weren't in a good position. So I think we took a step back and just realizing we're still in a good position. And it just gave us finally some time to rework our foundations. And that's really what allowed us to then grow. We opened Toronto the following year. We then opened Vancouver and New York. After that, Washington, Edmonton, Calgary, LA. And now we're opening 3 new regions now. So I don't think that the industry has picked up the pace that it was before COVID. I think, interest rate and stuff like that, there's still some limitations on the market, but we're seeing that there's a lot more movement. It's a lot more dynamic, and we're expecting that the market is going to be back to normal in the few years.
So a little recess was good just to kind of prepare. And yeah, it's rare that we find business models that are aligned so much with how, Chris and I see the evolution of this, which is when we're talking about scaling up, what we're talking about is duplicating these small initiatives and having, this broad spread out of little small initiatives. And that's the real challenge. How do you scale something that is small and located in a finite place, but you multiply it, and then how can you help it coordinate better, which is what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Standardization, in my opinion. I think we had that conversation also with the market gardener and just potential project to develop farms. It's good, but I think it becomes a bit too limitative in the person that you have in that role. Having that agility of saying, okay, I'm seeing a field there and I'm going to be creating this new thing. If it hasn't been standardized, I think it becomes a bit too limited to a one-man show or a few people's show. And for us, it's been a key success.
Yep.
And the, why small and multiplied is because small means more people get intimately connected to it.
Yeah.
So like each individual person actually gets something out of it.
Yeah.
And that makes me think too of, I was living in Montreal when the pandemic started, and my little backyard, which I was lucky enough to have one, just a tiny patch of grass, plus the parks were really my refuge. Yeah. Even without COVID, they were my refuge. Yeah. But I think of all the people that, if they had that or were introduced to it, how much more meaning it could add to their lives.
Yeah.
And so it's taking these spaces, giving people some green, some life.
Yeah, and also, not just introduced to it, but like put into a position of you have a role to play.
Yeah.
Here is the role, and then there's probably a progress that can happen. And just like, I guess I like from this discussion is the fact that when we create a template, people can come into it and then play a role. Yeah. As if we're always asking people to be, coming up with their own solution, which is great, it lacks the impact that it can have, because there's a lot of things that it's going to be hard for you to sustain, like we talked about them. But to be coordinated and to be part of a bigger group, I think that's something that has a lot of potential. And I think it's always also important. I don't know how often you think about this, Orlane, but we're fighting also big ag, and we're fighting a lot of things that are centralized and that are highly consolidated, and to have, to be decentralized and to be part of something like that, like what you're doing, I think is one initiative that's really important.
Yeah. I think we got to get in the wheel to change the wheel. That's a bit my way to see this. And I think just for me also, starting this business was a way to create a platform where we could showcase a business that could not just be profitable and beneficial for individuals behind it, but for a community, something greater than just our own benefit. And I think that's really what I wanted to create with this, just the fact about, how we're integrating farmers and providing long-term opportunities, career opportunities for people. But even beyond that, the social aspect of being able to create a change with the business, and I think that's at the core of farming in general, just creating an awareness, creating a sense of people understanding that we're all part of a whole. And if we're able to trickle down on other communities and other people with the benefit, then we're all better off. And I think that has been how the platform of Microhabitat have been successful at this, is transposing that concept of caring to very small stuff. So, for example, with kids, we'll talk about how the bumblebees can help, in the ecosystem, and how things are interacting with one another. And I feel like once we have that platform where humans are able to have a sense of understanding and have a sense of caring for something as small as a bumblebee or a ladybug, then it's a lot easier than to transpose that into how you're respecting others in your community, because I feel it's a good way of understanding that every being has a role in a whole.
How does that fit into the program? Like, how is there like a module on how to create awareness around,
Well, I think we do it with the different learning opportunities that we have depending on the clientele. But I feel like it start with creating awareness about the impacts of species like insects in production, because ecological farming needs all the different species to thrive. So we're showing that in that first part. The second way that we're doing it, I think it's the business model, is saying, hey, if we're producing for you and you feel like providing it to a local food bank, let's do it and let's promote it. So there's also a way of saying, hey, let's support our community, just like if we were to do it by creating a holistic space where all the insects would thrive off. So it's like always transposing that and saying we can change something in our ecosystem that will trickle down a benefit for the rest of the community.
But would Microhabitat have a toolbox of how to do these kind of workshops, or just like how to connect
all of the workshops that we're building are based off of that, basically creating that awareness either on that subject, on making sure that we're not using pesticides. So there's really like pieces of for us pain points that we see in farming and just sustainability in general that we're bringing back into our educational platform with really a positive and I would say engaging way. So issue, solution, and how can someone do something about it on their daily lives.
Yeah. I don't know if Chris,
you're doing school programs, I guess. Could you tell us about?
Yeah.
Or maybe one that really stands out to you, or if just in general?
So we work with youth services, La DPJ here in Quebec. We have a few centers with them. So one of them is basically a transitional house for young women that are going to be turning 18 in a few years. We've created some farming zones there where they could learn about growing. They could have also an outdoor space that is quiet, that allows them to just have a space of peace. They have the chance of having a chef internally. So then they're cooking meals together. So I think this one has been very beneficial or even impactful on a personal basis for me, realizing that, I had the privilege of being able to have dinner with a family that was loving around me and showed me how to cook and things like that. And it's basic skill sets that most people won't have in life. So being able to not just create a food space, but also a platform where maybe folks that haven't had that chance will have it and might have also a new career, idea or something that may incite them to go into farming or in kitchen or other kind of careers. So creating a platform for them to know about this.
It's powerful.
Do you get how this works, Chris? Like, because I guess like one of the things that I'm kind of poking is like Orlane is really clear on the why everything is done, but I'm getting more interested in what Microhabitat is as a platform, how it works, what kind of services it offers, how it takes these ideas and puts them into an action plan for people to do, and that's really what I'm.
We could talk through it in a step-by-step systematic way. Let's say I'm a building owner or property owner. Where do we begin?
This episode is brought to you by Activista. For our friends down under, Activista is the source for all your market gardening essentials. From their extensive line of seeders to non-GMO seeds, BCS equipment, and their very own cocoon caterpillar tunnels, they've got it all. They've got you covered. So for anyone listening in Australia and New Zealand, Activista is offering a sweet deal of 10% off your first order. And if you snag something like their precision seeders or dive into setting up a cocoon tunnel, You can chat directly with James for personal tips. And believe me, James is a friend. He's a great guy. He knows his stuff, and he's the one that can help you. It's a big deal to have him on this. So check them out at activista.com.au and join the small farm movement. Now let's get back to our program.
So we meet virtually. We're going to have a first discussion, and we're going to be looking at satellite imaging. So we have different technologies where we're looking at the building and assessing directly with the client, saying, okay, you have this building, even if you own it or you're just leasing it, there's the capacity to integrate urban farming. From that point on, we define what kind of programming you'd be interested in, defining the square footage of the farm, the number of activities, the numbers of growing tools that you will want for your members to then do their own project at home. And we're basically building that pricing based off of that. And we do everything. So in spring, for example, our team would come on your site. In about half a day, your farm would be set up by your farming team with the proper variety for the condition of the space. And from that point on, you would have a fixed schedule. Every Wednesday morning, you would have your farmer on site taking care of the maintenance, the harvesting. If you or your members want to join during that moment, they're invited to. And we define with you where you want your harvest to go. So either your cafeteria, drop-off location internally, or participate to a program that's called the Microhabitat Urban Solidarity Farms Program, where we would pair you with the food bank. We would ensure the logistic to bring all the fresh produce in your name. And alongside the operation of the program, we're providing educational activities. So it could be kiosk in the lobby of your building for Earth Month. It could be workshop. It could be garden visit and tour and tasting. We're really adapting and customizing the program based off of that. And we also have corporate gifts and gardening tools for people to have their logo on it, but then also initiate a movement where the green initiative can multiply through the members of that organization.
Okay.
If I were a small apartment building owner, and I wanted to make let's say a community garden on top, but I wanted help in the setup, is that something that we could arrange?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
What would that look like? Like I want to have each tenant have their own little spot and they take care of it, but I want like you to bring the soil and the pots and how would that work?
Realistically, we would continue to offer a turnkey service in a sense that we would be there to help with, amendment, fertilization processes. We would still be there on a weekly basis, but we want to create the platform where your users are feeling engaged about this. So then we would ensure that there's the right signaling and the right information so people know how to properly manage each one of the space. It's going to be also harmonious between the community members and how to properly really interact with the urban farm and know that they have a resource and an expert that can be at their disposition at all time to make sure that the project is going to be as successful as possible.
Okay, let's say we flip it. Let's say I'm a young grower.
Yeah.
I'm living in a city and I want to be part of this.
Yeah.
Who do I call? What's the program?
Apply for a job.
I apply for a job. Okay, let's say I apply for a job, but my thinking is
careers on the website.
I want to be part of this, but I'd like to have a project close to me. Can I initiate a project through you guys and kind of like see where I can fit that in? Use my contacts to perhaps.
For sure, all the farmers in our team are encouraged to bring new clients, but the concept would always be the same as saying, okay, is your client interested in having that turnkey program? Are we going to be able to integrate the Microhabitat service? Yes, go. Let's assess their needs and let's integrate it. That farmer though will probably have between 12 to 14 other clients to manage during the week.
Okay, so it's not just one farm.
No. They do about 3 farms a day.
It's a big job.
Yeah.
Like you need to know.
It's
okay.
farming.
And how do they get the training?
With us, we basically have a 2-week training, depending on the role, because we have different levels in the local teams. So depending on the role, they'll have a training. We now have procurement and expansion teams. So basically, for example, when we're opening region in the southern U.S. market, we have expansion team that are flying there, really supporting the local team, opening farms with them. Then they have quality control visit throughout the season. So it's a big structure that allows for the standard to really be applied onto the different branches. And then we have supporting team that are ensuring that we're following that and production is going to be the best possible.
Do you have a notable story of a particular startup in a new city that really sticks out to you or that you were really proud of, that's really important to you? Anything? share?
Yeah, I think New York has been really. It was the first American city to open,
and they had Brooklyn Grange was like a well-known
big initiative there. That's also a model where they were. I think it's more like a not-for-profit running the space and selling back the produce, doing some activations.
Yeah, I think it's commercial, some commercial farming that they have.
Yeah, in the green roof technology. So it's a huge program, but for us, New York is always following our standard, which is a smaller scale. So it was a bit crazy just to get on the 50th floor of a building next, and you see the Empire State Building right behind you, and you're growing there. You're discovering new pests. New York have different stuff than we have here, so adapting our standards. But in New York, we have our largest residential project in Stuytown, Peter Cooper Village. It's a community of 88 acres, 33,000 people living there. We produce 2 tons of food per season for that community. And the totality of the production is going for local food banks. So everything is done through subway also. We don't have any cars in New York. And we have a beautiful program that has been integrated to that operation, which is called a sociability group. Individuals that have limitations or handicap that are participating to the maintenance. So with our urban farmer, they're joining and helping. So it provides a space for them to learn new skill sets, go out there, and also just connect to the program. So it's been great to see
New
this
York.
happen. New York.
Do you know of the company Farm to People in New York?
No.
A friend of mine works with them. We're hopefully going to have them on the podcast. But they're one of the biggest. They bring in produce from outside the city and deliver it to people in the city. But they're like the biggest distributor in that way, and like all small scale organic.
I like
farming.
that.
They're very cool.
I think that's also really what I like to hear when initiating conversation about urban farming. Like sometimes I remember in the first phases of when we started the company, people were like, don't you feel farmers are not going to like you? Like you're going to steal business off of them?
Yeah.
No.
And I was like, you have to understand that first, growing in cities will never fulfill the demand for food.
Yeah, for sure.
First.
Yeah.
And it's just the perfect way of initiating that conversation. Like we're telling our clients, like, why don't you go to the farmer's market? Why don't you try to connect with local farmers?
Yeah.
Like if you like that heirloom tomatoes,
Yeah.
it's not true you're going to find it at the grocery store. You got to connect with local farmers that are pushing
So
those
it's
varieties.
like a Kickstarter.
Exactly.
dumping
We're promoters.
board.
Yeah.
What are the objections? The objections?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that too.
Yeah. So some of the objections that you faced throughout these years, like some of the
Yeah.
that people are saying, oh, you guys are doing this and that. Like
I think the financial aspect, what's our ROI or what are the credit that we could get from this. So that's where we want to continue to push because it's still very surprising to us that there's no incentive for businesses that are benefiting or greening or urban environment. I would say, I don't know, tax credits,
But are you getting pushback from the local farming scene or the local? No.
Not farming scene, but I don't know if it's necessarily pushback, but you just said how a city is not going to be able to produce all of the food it needs in the city.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, just the space in general. There's some things also that are not we're not going to do a potato field on a roof. It's just not worth it for us to do that. So we're focusing on high value crops. And I just think in general, for a system to be resilient, it needs diversity. And just like with anything, we need to have different systems that are operating, and just the communities in rural areas need to continue to have their field of work. They need to have their business. So it's just going to be complementary, I think. Yeah. Yeah,
and it's the claim is not to feed the entire city. It's very different from that.
Yeah.
But
I like how it's linked to the ecological services that it provides. I think that's one of the key point here is that you're right. People living in cities won't get fed by urban farms, but it's a great way to green the city. It's a great way to get a lot of people initiated to farming.
Yeah, and to make them value it.
Most people living in cities won't have the opportunity to go to a farm. outside in the country. They just for different reasons, it sometimes it just doesn't happen. And so to have spots there that are running, and then that there's production. Yeah. It's the other part. It's like there's a production aspect to it that not all urban gardens have that production aspect. Like you're producing, pumping out veggies.
Yeah. Yeah, we really took some method from a larger scale and really placed it into a small scale. I think the power that we also have is just creating that awareness around sustainability in general. Because for example, the first workshop for our corporate client is going to be on the introduction to ecological urban farming. But the first phase of that workshop is saying how natural space is going to help reduce climate change. And I think with this, what we're seeing is that this program sparks an interest and blooms into something much grander, discussing compost, rethinking when we're going to be cutting our grass. Do we want to cut this tree on the property? Do we want to integrate a non-rustic species of tree on our property? So it's all of that continuous awareness, and I think that's how it started with me. It was a first spark, and just my interest for sustainability started off with, physical issues with the food that I was consuming and starting to look into what I was consuming and things like that. And then just once you have that little drop of, your mind starts to widen up, you can't stop. So
I want to talk about that a bit. Yeah. What happened? Like, what was your personal experience that led you, that really?
I always had a lot of eczema and just having a hard time with skin problems, and just realizing at some point and consulting doctors, and they were like, no link at all with food. But then I was going online and looking at other sources because I wasn't able to solve my issue with just the medicine that they were providing to me. And I've come from a very grounded family that always valued healthy food and just healthy lifestyle in general. And just, I think through my dad's side, being a Swiss and in Switzerland, having a connection to production in general, like really a typical urban farming in general, it just sparked an interest for me to just say, hey, I think, you are what you eat. So what do we eat? And once you start going down the rabbit hole, it's pretty shocking. And I don't think that you can come back just continuing to consume the same way once you know that. So that was really my trigger, understanding it better.
Did that send you directly into the farming world, or did it also take you down? Because we've spoken about this with some other people, how the health trigger, sometimes it sends people more down the supplement or that kind of, but then other people, they find the organic farming, or they find what was the kind of path that happened?
I think I've been to that. Meandered. Yeah, where you try to find an easy solution that would be like that magic pill, and then you just continue to go, and dive deeper, and you realize there's no such thing as that. It's just at some point understanding that we're beings that need to be connected with real food, real natural environment. It's a whole, being healthy and well. It's not just about the food. It's about lots of different things. And for me, it was just diving into that really led me to urban farming, just a question of timing too. And just coincidence with Alex and myself being together in that journey. But I think I want to see myself in the future also as diving even deeper. And how can I transpose that experience of building a business, scaling something onto new challenges that I think are bigger for the world in general. So urban farming is one thing, but I think the big challenge is also how can we do ecological agriculture on a large scale, not necessarily large farms, but on a global scale. Yep. And I think traveling a lot and just seeing some of the limitation and opportunities, especially in, for example, Caribbean islands and places like that, I think I'm starting to be a lot more interested in even more resiliency in farming. So if you're off grid, water sources and things like that.
Yeah, we just had a guest on the podcast, a farmer in French Polynesia on a tiny island.
Yeah, it's incredible the amount of. It's always the same thing though. It's like if you bring expertise, if you bring a set way of doing things, you can really have impact. So did you end up better off with your health because of what you eat?
Yeah, I understand better now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now it's just a question of being able to stay, consistent.
I don't know if I'm allowed to share these things, but one of the things that I've learned through health and food is like, for all these years, I was trying to add stuff to my diet, like this beneficial food, and I've always eaten really good, healthy, local, organic food, but I travel a lot, and sometimes that's complicated. But I was always thinking in terms of adding something to my diet, and at one point it's the reverse. Like I start to just subtract things, and then in the end, just I'm not eating anymore. And that's when the real magic happens, when you start to not eat and fast. It's just like, that's where the healing is. I've seen it in my body, and like, so whenever now I'm taking a plane, I grab an apple in my bag, and that's going to be my snack for the day, and that solved a lot of my problems. Instead of trying to find where I could eat good food and where I could. It's just like, it's so complicated.
Listening to your body. I feel like we're just so much in a structured environment that most of the time, I remember having those conversations. Oh, you're not eating like 3 meals a day and snacking between that.
No.
Like, I don't think that your body should be digesting that many hours during the day. But I mean, to each his own. I'm more like you. I feel like you need to reset. You need to listen to your body, and especially being intuitive about it. It's just hard during the winter month for us, especially in the city. Like, don't feed me a tomato salad that is just like hydroponic. I don't want to eat it. I'm not having fun eating it, and I feel like eating should be fun. And once you all start understanding also when things taste good, they also are good, full of nutrients, then that's when you realize that.
Okay, I want to ask you something else. What do you feel about a farm? Let's say there's a farm. It's a rooftop farm. Yeah. It grows hydroponic vegetables, but it sells through all of it's a member kind of farm. You subscribe to it. You have a weekly offer sheet, and you choose what you want. It delivers to you. So it has a rooftop farm. It sells locally. That's what it's advertised on, and it also aggregates veggies from local farms, organic farms. And what can you say about that kind of business model, where it's hydroponic, it's local organic, it's sold as all of the above? It's kind of confusing. Do you think that's a business model that has? What would you scale that if you had the chance?
Just say, why don't you go with the soil production? No, but that would be my thing.
Oh, okay, that would be your.
That would be the first thing that I would see. I was like, no, I understand the hydroponic and just the growing per square footage and. Man, do we do wine in hydroponic methods? No. There's a reason why. If you want to have the quality of the nutrients, the taste, the everything, create that ecosystem also for microorganisms. Like I think it's still a hard sell because most people are not even conscious about what are the impact of those small beings and just that kind of production in general. But it's an awareness we need to continue. As much as, 10 years ago, people were not necessarily understanding the benefit of eating organic. I think we're going there with the living soil. But I think that would be the first piece of the model that I would challenge.
Okay, great. So you challenge
But proximity to that kind of production for city dwellers, I think it's going to be a key element in just sustainability for urban environments. Awareness is necessary. And if someone is not aware that a tomato is not supposed to taste like water, then they're not going to be inclined, I think, to go and invest in buying those kind of produce or better ways of feeding themselves. And so it really, sometimes you got to grab people by the stomach, I feel.
Do you know, Orlane, that in the U.S., hydroponic is certified organic?
I know.
You know that.
Yeah, because when we're selling our indoor production unit, it's a soil-based module. And we're always explaining to clients, you're one of the only country in the world that is approving organic with hydroponic system. But in Canada and in Europe, it's not approved because it's not organic.
Because it's not organic.
No. And sustainability. I mean, don't want to dive too much into that, but like, what's going to be the time until we're not able to sustain those systems anymore? Because you got to take those fertilizers from somewhere and make them.
Yeah.
What does sustainability mean to you? I know that the Microhabitat uses the word a lot. You say it a lot. I'm just curious about where do you see that word? Good question.
I think sustainability is working with limited resources and having really a long-term vision. And how we're applying that to our business model is how we're investing in the people that are in that field. I think that's the main key element of this. And just the way that we're getting everything that we use to operate. And sometimes there's some limitation. For example, the textile pot. It's been years that we're trying to see, okay, can we bring this back to a localized production? But the reality of the global market is that the textile industry is no longer in North America. Mm-hmm. Most of it is in Asia. So there's always challenges in like your value in the reality of the world.
Oh, yeah.
It's just understanding what do you have in your control and how can you go in the right direction to make sure that you align with your values. But I think sustainability is about being able to sustain yourself on the long term. Hence also the reason why I think we came up with a corporation and not a non-for-profit. We had some limitation that we saw with the non-for-profit. We were seeing that people had a hard time finding ways to be on the long term with those organizations. And we don't feel that's okay because it's people feeding us. They need to be able to forecast how they're going to be feeding themselves on the long run.
You're obviously a believer in business for the betterment of the environment and the world. Mm-hmm. Can you say a word about that? Like without saying that, non-business like enterprises are not as good, but why business? Why, and you seem like you're very strong in business. You have that acumen. You think business is a good driver for change?
I think so. I think once again, it's getting in the wheel to change the wheel. Is just like we're in a capitalist system. And sometimes for us to be able to connect with the big organization that have a lot of control over some of the issues that we're seeing there is being able to really integrate them on the same level. And I feel like proximity and feeling that you are a bit the same is helping a lot in that. Yeah.
That same language.
Yeah. But it's also, I think, my way of going about this is just asking myself what is my leverage in terms of helping others? How, and climbing and going to aiming for the sky, how can I just turn around and just lay a hand for someone to benefit from? And I think that's something that I want to model and inspire others to do. I think that's how I want to go about with business, is using that platform and using that structure to be able to help others. Yeah.
Yeah, and going back to what you said at the beginning about government, it's government follows, the movements of business in a way. It's easier to start there, and then eventually you'll get that influence. Do you have any success stories so far with getting involved with local government anywhere?
Well, I think...
Well, you have impact here in Montreal.
Yeah, we do.
Definitely, you're on the spotlight.
Yeah. I feel we have a lot of implication with institutions that are connected to governmental agencies. So, for example, the youth services that we do, the programs for, we do a lot of schools. And we do also work with institutions that are closely related to the government. So, for example, sometimes, for underprivileged communities, we realize that most of the schools, especially in Quebec, don't have budgets for anything else than just the school, services. So we started some programs where we had big investment fund, like pension fund from the government, that were financing project for underprivileged schools. So creating a bit of that connection and network, but it's tedious work. It takes us a lot more time than developing a regular program, but it aligns with our value. We see the benefit. We see what it does to the community. So we still want to invest our time in that, but it's an effort that if we just wanted to focus on profitability, it wouldn't be part of our program, but it's not the way that we're running the business. So.
Yeah, I do feel that, for having so many friends that are, I would say, kind of around my age, and you're younger than me, working in the nonprofit sector all these years, like looking for grant money, writing these proposals, it's really limiting that if you're always you can't develop and evolve according to your pace. You're doing it according to the grants that you're getting or not getting.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating for a lot of my friends that are in that.
It's draining.
It's, to create a business model that is kind of self-sustaining, promoting itself and duplicating. I think there's a lot of value there for sure.
And also just realizing, there's so many companies that have the capacity to pay for this and that they're going to be benefiting from it. I think at some point we position ourselves in ensuring that the sustainability aspect of the program was there. So we're not signing contract on a 1 year so you can do a marketing stunt and then just let the farm go to waste.
Greenwashed.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but more and more companies need to align with those values because millennials are starting to integrate the workplace and they want to go for organizations that are resonating with their value. They don't want to see companies not being sustainable. It's a pressuring point for younger generations.
Yeah.
So we see it a lot more. But I think in general, humans are asking themselves after COVID, why should I go to the office if there's nothing to offer? I'll work from home. I won't do the commute. So it's rethinking, how can human be better off by going at work? Is it that they have access to a gym, a farm, human interactions?
You don't need to go there if you don't want to. But would there be examples of certain businesses that you wouldn't want to? Let's say Lockheed Martin calls you. I think they're in Dallas, and they're they're building missiles, and they want to have a rooftop garden. Would there be or Syngenta calls you, or Monsanto, or I don't know?
I would still go for Bayer.
You'd still go for Bayer?
I would like to.
Okay.
I feel, and the reason why is I understand the whole side of maybe them doing some greenwashing with us, but my aim is if I can change the mind of just one person at that organization so it trickles down into how they're doing stuff or it creates an awareness, I think we're better off.
Okay.
And I think that, and normally what we see also for those companies that they decide to give back to a local food bank, at the end of the day, the family that is not having anything to eat,
it's benefiting.
They're benefiting from it. So I see why people are asking me this question, but for me, I think I want to go beyond that, and just say we just need more people to be aware of this. And our workshops are talking about their way of producing and how it's not beneficial. So we're not going to change our workshop. We're still going to. And you see them on the pictures.
Yeah,
so.
you won't change the business. You won't change the business model for them.
Yeah,
it's like going
get in the wheel to change the wheel.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that we got out of today's talk.
Get
the wheel to change the wheel.
Do you have are there any cities that you know of that are just really well ahead on being sustainable and green, and anything that comes to your mind?
Well, Montreal is surprisingly a really big place for urban farming. And for sure, California, they're the first one at the forefront, I think, especially for anything that has to do with farming, realizing how much climate changes are affecting their production. So California has been, pretty open to this. But what has been very surprising to me is I feel farming can connect on, it's a basic need. So we can connect on so many different values. For example, when we're talking more to Alberta or Texas, I even have some clients that are like, I don't give a damn about sustainability, but we want to be autonomous and resilient, and farming is, right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a big thing now.
So you can really get and connect on different values. And I think that's the beauty of farming is we're all eating every day. So sometimes when we're fasting, maybe not, but I feel it's a connector. And there's always ways to connect as humans on that subject. So
absolutely.
It's always about that. It's always about connecting with other humans.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah. It would have made for great office episodes. I can just keep
all those.
A little parkour in the urban farm.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you as well about dreaming again into the future, like other ways that you can get implicated. Do you have thoughts about parks and courtyards and or even abandoned lots, like other ways of other overlooked spaces?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of potential there. There's legal limitations. I think there was some things, for example, I remember in Montreal, an organization called Les Fruits Défendus, and they were going to harvest from fruit trees in the city and then donating. I think those models are amazing. I think like we should have an edible jungle in the city. There's so many places where we could grow, and I think for us, we're starting with just typical stuff and wowing people with heirloom varieties, but we want to go back to even deeper things, like things that are not on supermarkets, really like local species, and harvest the forest a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be really interesting. I'm not sure if that's going to be my journey.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to convincing municipalities, et cetera. And I think it's just not a fast-moving pace enough for me. I think I want to see myself more in the industry for finding new solutions for larger scale, for really places that are off-grid, and that could continue to be a bit off-grid with very autonomous systems that are not ripe yet, but continuing to work in that sense, I think. Yeah.
Can you see fruit trees grown in these textile pots?
It could. It's just for, depending on where we are, the issue is winterization. Okay. So just protecting the root system and just making sure that the plant will thrive throughout the winter, because the thing is most rooftop won't accumulate as much snow as rural areas. So it doesn't insulate the plant. Load bearing capacity, wind factors also.
Okay.
It's just, it could work. It's not a model we're pushing, just for the weight of the system. And at some point, also your shrub or your tree needs to be replanted somewhere else, or in a larger pot.
But that's also where ground level, commercial, and because I'm thinking about all like the big patios and of like big buildings. Like there's a lot of space, right? That can get used. Well, a lot of that might not get enough sun, but if it does.
We don't also push anything that is growing directly in the soil in urban environments, because we're not providing a service of like soil testing and adapting. And, you've been farming, adapting a soil can take 10 years. Yeah. So the standardized method also implicates having or special recipe for the soil that we use, that container for that specific size. So I think that the fruit and just the trees in general are an interesting offer. Engineering wise, there's a lot more, things involved with that when working in an urban environment.
So we need some other companies to come in and start those projects.
Landscaping programs normally integrate that, because you'll have, engineers assess the root development, and because it's implicating a lot more things in terms of integrating that, especially on rooftop or patios.
You talked about the membranes, not piercing them.
You don't want to void your roof entrance and things like that. Yeah, so it's been a bit of a tweaking. Urban farming is aligning with what normal building owners and managers.
But it has evolved a lot.
Yeah,
like I've seen it grow over the years, and it's really It's really impressive, all the road that it took. Yeah, I'm really surprised. Yeah, because I always thought, to be frank, I always thought urban farming would be like, once you've started to farm, you're going to migrate to a micro farm or a farm outside in the country, because it's a way of life.
Yeah.
But actually what I'm seeing is that there's such a huge need and demand for city dwellers to reconnect with nature that it has a special place. It really has an important place.
And I don't think that everyone is also made to live out of the city. Yeah. Some people like that balance, and I think we see it a lot in our teams, is people that have studied in farming or environmental sciences, that have worked on the field, but are city dwellers or were born and raised in cities, and they kind of like that, middle way between being in the field during the day, but then being able to be at the 5 à 7. And,
there you go. It's
a balanced life.
You can't take that out of us. We're French Canadian. What can we say?
Exactly.
We're guilty of that.
Yeah.
L'apéro.
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone knows what l'apéro is, but that's the
happy hour, I feel.
Happy hour.
Yeah,
it's not the same.
It's not the same. When I moved to Quebec, I was so pleased to learn of apéro. I was like, this is so much nicer, because happy hour is a bit, it really just feels like it's a drinking thing.
Yeah.
It's only meant for like partying.
Yeah.
Anytime you go to Europe, l'apéro is not just, it's just like it's a way of life. Yeah. Like every night it's going to be l'apéro, and then people talk and chat and they get together and
yeah. Shall we do some rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
Well, they're as rapid as you want them to be. It's up to you.
Okay.
Is there a book that you've read many times?
The Four Agreements.
The 4
Okay.
agreements.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about it?
Zach Alfeltek.
Yeah, a simple book about just human interactions in general. It basically recaps 4 rules that can help you have harmonious relationships with others. One of the most important one, I think, for me is always trying to do your best, because I think I'm pretty, intense with myself and wanting to perform. But once you start to just always do your best, even if it doesn't, end up in the right way, you've done what you've tried. You tried the most.
Yeah.
I try to really transpose that to my team and saying, especially what we do, like we're creating something that has never been done before. So if you fear about the unknown, just know that if you're doing your best, you're still heading in the right direction, and we'll figure it out alongside the way.
Is there another one of those agreements that you have an example of how you've implemented it into your life?
One is about right language.
Yeah, always
Never lie.
Yeah, always have a positive, way to talk.
Yeah.
Don't make assumptions. That's a really
Such
good
a
one.
big one.
Yeah, but I think they call it la parole impeccable, so impeccable way of talking. You're sharing positive, you're getting positive. So it's just a question of giving the right energy and receiving it back.
Have you looked into nonviolent communication,
Yeah.
Orlane?
Yeah.
It very much is like that. Like not assuming anything, voicing your concerns, sometimes going fishing. It's like,
Yeah.
because people are not, they're not made, they just don't know how to express what's going on.
Yeah.
They don't read their emotions very well. And sometimes it's going fishing, say, hey, are you feeling this for that reason?
Yeah.
And then it comes out.
Yeah.
And then it becomes clear.
Yeah. Especially because I think I tend to be not pessimistic in general, but like I try to see all the side of a situation and also the downside and what could go wrong and things like that. So I think it brings me back to a mindset of just feel what's coming. Just face it. Don't assume anything. Just go and face it. And it's been beneficial also for me as a leader because, you feel my energy, you know how I am, but I'm really big. I'm super driven. I'm super out there and sometimes, it can be pressuring for others. So it's also a way for me to, I think, go on more of a balanced leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, on that note, you obviously, any strong leader or leadership needs to have a support group.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've been lucky to first have Alex as a second business partner. I really think that people that are going into a business journey solo,
Yeah.
I'm lifting my
Yeah,
hat to them.
it's tough.
It's really tough. It's nice to be challenged sometimes and just have a second perspective. It brings challenges. I mean, Alex is like my family now. I feel like he's my brother, but for sure there's some time where it's not super harmonious, but we're able to come back from that because at the end of the day, we're really doing everything for our mutual benefit beyond business, just as human beings in general. I want him to be happy and he wants me to be happy in general. So that has been great. But yeah, I think being a leader is always challenging. And especially when you're trying to trust your gut, is sometimes how do you go about trusting and respecting yourself and yet still respecting others?
Yeah. What advice did you hear when you were really young that you only appreciated much later in life?
Good question. I would say I'm not really following the advice, but I've heard some people in the first phase of her business that were like, we're not sure you're going to be able to scale this service or et cetera. And I think just from my family background and doing a lot of sports when I was young, just nothing is impossible. I've been through a situation where I felt I never had the power to overcome something, and just you keep on pushing, you see a new perspective. And if you keep on believing nothing is impossible, literally nothing is impossible. So just one step at a time, continue to push.
Were there times when you had a lot of doubt?
Oh, yeah, always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, probably right.
Always.
I think most people have doubt regularly about things, but you learn to know what to do with that, right?
I try to go back and have a perspective on if I were to tell myself 10 years ago where I would be now, I would never believe it. So I try to, take a step back and take some perspective on stuff and sometimes just breathe. I'm not a surgeon. No one's going to die if the tomato is not going well. I mean, for sure, I want to always do good, but I think having that privilege of saying, hey, I'm just going to try to do my best, we'll figure it out.
Were you a trained athlete?
Yeah, I did horseback riding for...
Perfect. Yeah. So you have that background in you of kind of like not just competing, but going through the motion of...
You can be last one day and you can be the champion the next day. It just is about how you put your mindset to it. And I think also riding a horse is a good way to learn about letting go.
Sheesh, I bet.
Yeah, because I was able to control my performance, but you're on a wild animal, so it's still a perspective not to lose sight of.
Wow.
Yeah. What is the best difficult decision you ever made? Or one of the best?
I think whenever there's restructuring or having to let people go, or when people are leaving the company, it happens. It's always because I get really attached to people because I feel like we're all a big family at Microhabitat. So whenever there's those changes, it's always tough because I want to make sure that whatever I do, I fix the problem and I leave the human intact. It's something that I really strongly believe on. And life is always giving me something beautiful after that. Whenever I feel like, oh my God, that was not maybe the right choice or whatever, there's always something more beautiful that comes out of it. So trusting life in that, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes people lose their job and that's just for their own betterment too.
Yeah, and they're better off and we're better off.
And they're just on the spot, sometimes they don't realize it, but
exactly.
2 years down, they'll look back and say, oh, that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah. And I think also becoming a leader in now a larger team, my role is really about like communicating where the mission is going, but also understanding that there's a lot of people that are not going to be understanding where we're heading, why we're doing this, because not everybody's mind is made the same way. Like I see myself being in 40 locations within the next 5 years and being in Europe. Some people don't feel engaged with this, but that's okay. And it's fine to have many different people in an organization to make it happen.
Yeah.
We said earlier, you are what you eat, but sometimes I think you are what you seek.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really defines you also.
Yeah. That really, Alex, my business partner, I think was powerful and meaningful in bringing me to that kind of mindset. I think he's a visionary. He really sees the world as it's not now and being able to trickle down all of that into our business model and just business in general. But I think Alex was always like, no, like the urban farming industry is valued at $550 billion in 2028. We're going to get at least one of those $1 billion. Let's go.
Let's do it.
And why not? And I think that really brought me a perspective of having that confidence when I come into a board meeting and there's VP of portfolio of North America. I just feel like this guy was like me 10 years ago. He just wanted to start this career and just went for it. Yeah. So I feel like I took a step back and just now feel more comfortable in also saying, if I want to do it, I'll do it.
What is the best failure you've ever had?
Or one of the.
Yeah, or one of the. I know best can be a hard thing to do.
I think whenever you lose a client, it's a really I'm into performance. I hate not winning. And that's a really humbling moment where you just got to open your ears, get it all in, and just learn and understand, start mapping what can you do to never have to live through this again or never disappoint a client, because it happens to all of us. So yeah, very humbling situation. Same thing with not performing in a pitch. I remember my first pitch, the client completely destroyed me. I was in a corner and I was like shattered. I kept it inside, but I really looked back at that meeting and I took some notes and I realized what was wrong and what should I do for the future. And same thing when building or pitch, sitting down with someone, I was like, I don't care about sustainability. I was like, perfect. Let's have it sit down. I have something to sell you. Yeah. And if you're able to really face that adversity, I think that's where you become very strong.
Yeah, you learn way more from the people that will challenge you than you do from an echo chamber.
For sure.
And actually, I think everyone needs that. If they have a strong drive towards something, they should find someone that wants to challenge it, because it's just going to make it so much stronger.
Yeah, the obstacle is the way.
Yeah.
It's there's just this how it is.
Yeah.
And do you ever have that happen when you feel like you're telling someone something very, very obvious, like you're just explaining how, I don't know, small scale farming is a good thing in a very general sense. They're just like, why is it? And then they start, and you're like, oh shit, I thought everyone disagreed.
Every day.
That happens to me. But it's a bit of a wake up call to like remind yourself to really like keep like the real reasons front and center, because it can just get a bit of, what do you mean? Well, of course it's good. It's like, well, yeah, but why?
Yeah. Yeah, as simple as, do you know that trees are providing you with fresh air?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right? And things like that. Yes, but I think it's, I like it though. I kind of like it to sometimes see someone just initiates and start realizing these things. I'm like,
that's great.
It's great. You have so much to learn. And I feel like we always learn. So I'm always in a mindset where you never stop learning. So for some other people, I'm the same in certain field.
Yeah. Well, I'm good there.
Well, you're definitely an inspiration to a lot of people that I know, and I really feel, Orlane, that your trajectory is remarkable. The work that you're doing is really important and really epic, and so I just want to congratulate you on that road.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you for coming to the podcast today.
But I have to say, I think it's a generation pushing another. I think what we do has been also, impacted by what you've done, and seeing just how all of our efforts are starting to bloom into many different things. It's something very powerful. It's
a big snowball.
Yeah,
that's rolling.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, and how do people get in?
So you can get in touch with Microhabitat at microhabitat.com. Really connect with us if you're interested in learning more, joining our team, opening new cities. We're always opening, so it's really growing a global movement with a local force. So
love it.
Yeah.
And is there any social media in particular that's good to follow?
We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, or X now. I don't know. I'm not on it, but definitely across all platforms. And we just want to create this green movement. So anyone that is interested in promoting this and just participating, please reach out.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Hope you're enjoying the podcast. These are important conversations, and we're really excited to have them and to share them with everyone. You can check out the work that we do at the Market Gardener Institute. You can check out our website, themarketgardener.com. Our mission is to multiply the number of small ecological farms around the world. And we do this by offering training, online courses to new aspiring farmers, but also to seasoned growers. We're helping them take it to the next level. So you can check out the work that we do. You can follow us on social media. You can sign up to our newsletter to get a lot of freebies about gardening, farming, but also about how small-scale farming is changing the world. And that's really what we're all about, and that's really what this is all about. So again, super excited that you guys are on board. We are changing the world.